Just 1 week after the September 11 attacks, another form of terror struck the USA. It didn't come from hijacked airplanes. Instead, it appeared in ordinary envelopes. Inside of them was a fine white powder that seemed harmless, but it contained one of the deadliest bacteria known to science, anthrax. 5 people died, and 17 others became seriously ill. Government buildings shut down, postal workers were exposed, and panic spread across the country. For years, nobody knew who was responsible, and to this day, many question whether or not the mystery was truly solved. This is the story of the 2001 Anthrax Attacks. Anthrax is caused by the bacterium Bacillus anthracis. It naturally exists in soil and mainly infects livestock, such as cattle, sheep, and goats. Humans usually become infected through contact with infected animals or animal products, as anthrax itself is not contagious from person to person. The real danger comes from its spores, as they are incredibly durable. They can survive in soil for decades and become active once they enter a suitable environment. There are 3 main types of anthrax infection. Cutaneous anthrax enters through the skin and is usually treatable. Gastrointestinal anthrax comes from eating contaminated meat, and inhalation anthrax, the deadliest form, comes when microscopic spores are breathed into the lungs and are often fatal without rapid treatment. Because anthrax spores are easy to store, difficult to detect, and potentially lethal, many governments studied them during the Cold War as possible biological weapons. The first anthrax letters were mailed on September 18, 2001. They were sent to several news organizations, including NBC News, ABC News, CBS News, the New York Post, and the National Enquirer. The letters contained powdered anthrax and threatening messages. One note read, "Death to America, death to Israel, Allah is great." The wording immediately led many investigators to suspect foreign terrorists, especially because the country was still reeling from 9/11. Then, on October 9th, another wave of letters was mailed. This time, the targets were 2 US senators, Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy. These letters contained an even more refined and concentrated form of anthrax. When Senator Daschle's office opened one of the envelopes, spores spread through the room and ventilation systems. Large sections of the Capitol complex were evacuated and closed. Mail delivery across the country slowed dramatically as authorities began screening millions of letters, and people became afraid to open their mail. In total, 22 people were infected. 11 developed inhalation anthrax, the deadliest form. 5 of those people died. The victims included postal workers who unknowingly handled contaminated letters, hospital employees, and civilians who had no connection to politics or the media. The FBI launched an investigation known as Amerithrax. It became one of the largest and most expensive investigations in the Bureau's history. Initially, investigations focused heavily on foreign terrorist groups, but as scientists examined the spores, something surprising emerged. The anthrax appeared to come from a highly sophisticated laboratory. This wasn't something most terrorist organizations could easily produce. Attention slowly shifted towards the American biodefense laboratories. One scientist became the main suspect, Bruce Edwards Ivins. Ivins worked at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, where he spent years researching anthrax vaccines. Investigators argued that the spores were genetically linked to a flask under his control. They also cited unusually long working hours in his laboratory around the time the letters were prepared, along with evidence of mental health struggles. However, the case remained largely circumstantial. No direct evidence ever placed Ivins at a mailbox, no eyewitnesses saw him send the letters, no fingerprints or DNA connected him to the envelopes.
Of the investigation, because we believed that based on the evidence we had collected, we could prove his guilt to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt.
July 2008, before criminal charges could be filed, Bruce Ivins died from an overdose of painkillers in what authorities ruled a suicide. 2 years later, the FBI officially closed the investigation. The Bureau concluded that Ivins acted alone. However, some scientists questioned whether the evidence truly proved he was responsible, and several members of Congress criticized aspects of the investigation. Others argued that the FBI relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence after years of failing to identify a suspect. Without trial, many questions were never tested in court, and the debate continues over whether the case is fully resolved. The Anthrax attacks remain one of the most unusual terrorist incidents in modern history. A handful of letters caused nationwide panic, disrupted the federal government, transformed America's approach to biological security, and triggered years of investigation. The FBI considers the case closed, yet for many observers, unanswered questions remain. Whether history ultimately accepts the official conclusion or not, the attacks demonstrated that some of the most dangerous weapons are not bombs or missiles. Sometimes they fit inside an envelope. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of America's most puzzling bioterrorism cases, consider subscribing for more videos exploring history, politics, and the events that continue to shape our world.